Hello, my name is Marcus King. I'm a graduate of Allen Hancock College, recent graduate of UC Davis, hoping to be another graduate of UC Davis by going to their law school, King Hall School of Law, pretty soon here. I wouldn't be here today, I wouldn't be successful if I did not have EOPS, if I didn't have DSPS. I don't wear shades because I think my future is so bright, although I do think that, but I'm blind in my left eye, I have disability. Now, the flexibility of these programs puts so many programs at each other's throat. All are trying to fight for crumbs, basically, when what we're trying to do is get students prepared so they can contribute to a bigger piece of the pie when they become people that move into a higher tax-paying bracket. That's what we want, to keep our state successful, to keep us successful, to make these students successful. There was a mention of about 75,000 EOPS students. When you hit a certain unit, when you hit a certain number of units, you're no longer EOPS student. That was me. But EOPS enabled me to continue to go to college. So did CalWorks. I was a single father. I was homeless for a short time with my daughter. You know, the programs that I had that were available to me helped me. Making a cut to you know, having campuses do what they will with flexible funding really creates more issues and more of a challenge for some of these students and gets a lot of them lost in the cracks. So please restore the funding. There was also mention of like summer bridge programs. When I was at UC Davis, I worked for EAOP, and I actually did the summer bridge program, the Journey Summer Bridge program over at ARC. I did the summer bridge program over at Consumers River College. If you want students that are really going to help more students, then students that cannot lose, that cannot afford to lose, that come through these successful categorical programs are what we need. That's why I was so enthusiastic in the work that I did. That's why I was so successful in getting students to consider college that would never do it otherwise. So please restore the funding to categoricals. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Scott Hamilton. I'm a learning disability specialist and counselor at Consumers River College. My first comment is before you can have success, you have to have access. And for students with disabilities, that means Braille, interpreters, all the other services that they need to get accommodations just to get access to the instruction. And that's what it was mentioned earlier about mandates. There is a mandate. There are federal and state laws that mandate equal access for people with disabilities. That's why DSPS was established in 1976, was to implement accommodations and to give equal access to students with disabilities. And then 5 years ago, when everything was being cut, DSPS, EOPS, the other programs were caught up in that. But I talked to legislators and staff that were involved in that, and that was not their intention. It just got caught in the swath of cut $500 million here, $500 million there. Money got cut. Then they said, well, we'll take federal funds, we'll use it as a stopgap for a year or two to then make the programs whole again to continue to do what they were doing, but that didn't happen. So a policy change was essentially made because of mistakes in the budgeting process. It was never intended. Then last year there was a little bit of money put back in to DSPS and some of the other programs, but it doesn't come close to fully restoring the need for the students that we already serve. It is a mandate. We can't turn any student away in the DSPS program. Everybody gets access. There is money in the budget. Everybody says there's going to be more money. There is money in the budget. The student equity program, I'll just say that I agree with everything that Will said related to EOPS. Student equity funding, we don't need to set programs against each other, which is what's going to happen on campus. It's already proven that the mandate is not being met at colleges. There was a study 2 years ago done by the Community College Chancellor's Office showing that over 25% of DSPS students had to drop a course, not couldn't get a course, had to drop a course because they didn't get their accommodations. That's over 32,000 students a year if you multiply that out across the state. And to give perspective, we are rightly concerned about City College of San Francisco and the 77,000 students there right now. There are almost 120,000 students with disabilities in the system. We need to give as much effort towards those students. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Marsucci and members of the committee. My name is Ralph Black. I'm here for the California Association for Post-Secondary Education and Disability, and also representing the California Council of the Blind. My colleague mentioned the 40% cuts to DSPS and other categorical programs, and many of the colleges are not able to meet the requirements of the federal law to provide those services such as interpreters and so forth that are required as a matter of under the civil rights laws of this country. And we've been making this point to the administration and the legislature. Finally, last year, this committee voted to provide a $67 million augmentation for the program, and we appreciate your support at that time. Unfortunately, through the budget negotiations, that got whittled down to $15 million. And basically, what was said was, well, you know, there's not quite enough money this year to take care of it, but wait till next year and we'll solve these problems. Well, next year is here, and as you've heard, there's plenty of money in the budget. The governor's going to take care of all the deferrals. There's money for 3% growth, which may actually be more than the system even needs, and then more money for student success, and so forth. So we think the time has come to provide the restoration of funding for DSPS and the other categorical programs. We believe that $50 million would be needed to be able to provide the same level of service for students with disabilities that we were providing back in 2008, if you take into account the additional number of students that the programs are serving and those cost of living adjustments that everyone has talked about as being so essential. Now, you heard that the idea is that this $100 million for student equity could be used to meet the needs of students with disabilities. But I think there are a couple of problems with that. First of all, one thing is that I think is very likely that students with disabilities would get lost in the shuffle. You heard Mr. Rodriguez and Chancellor Benjamin talk about the kinds of services that they anticipate being provided by student equity. Heard a lot about learning communities and summer bridge programs and so forth. I didn't hear anybody talk about interpreters for deaf students or Braille materials for blind students. And I'm afraid that when that food fight that Will Bruce talked about starts on the campus, that nobody's going to remember about those services. And the second problem is that, as I said, these are matters of civil rights. They're mandated by law. There is no mandate in the law for summer bridge programs. They may be a great program, and each local community should be able to decide at their local discretion whether to fund that program or not. But accommodations for students with disabilities are not optional. They shouldn't be left up to local discretion. There's plenty of money, and it's time to just get this problem solved. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me remind folks to try to keep your comments to 2 minutes. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Hello, and thank you. I really appreciate this opportunity to address you. My name is Grace Hansen. I'm the Director of Disability Services at Mount San Antonio College, which is in Southern California. But today I'm here as President of the California Association of Post-Secondary Education and Disability. Therefore, I'm representing the entire state of California Disability Services and community colleges. And last year, together with the legislature, we were successful in securing another $15 million, as you heard, for DSPS as well as for EOPS. So I'm here again to say thank you for that. We really needed that, but it is just the beginning. And in order to fully restore equity and access for students with disabilities, we require another $50 million. We're a lot of talk about success. As my colleague Scott Hamilton mentioned earlier, you can't have success for students with disabilities without access first. And equity and success and access, an example of that in 2009 when the budget cuts hit, 25%, a little bit over 25% of students with disabilities were denied access to instruction, access to classrooms. They had to withdraw from one or more classes. Therefore, there was no success for those students. I think before we can talk about success, we really need to talk about access. And if we're talking about access and we're talking about success and you're talking about money and we want to make sure that the funds are fully accountable, DSPS and EOPS already have mechanisms through Title V by which to account for their funds. You know, we're audited every year. We have to show how we're spending our funds. So student equity funds are great, and we appreciate that, but there's no mechanism right now on how to expend those funds. Therefore, we're recommending through KPED that $50 million of those student equity funds be redirected to DSPS and to EOPS, programs that already have accountability systems built into them. So this is a civil right, and mandates, state and federal mandates, shouldn't depend on power or charisma in order to obtain necessary dollars to provide access for students with disabilities. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, and I know you'll do the right thing.
Thank you.
Evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Abraham De La Rosa. I stand here today not only as an EOPS student, but also as a military veteran. I wouldn't be standing here today, actually, if it was for EOPS. Upon return from the military, I was diagnosed with PTSD, anxiety and depression. And many students, many veterans come back from the military with these type of health issues, concerns, and programs like EPS took it upon themselves to not enlist me, but get me into their program. And my success story is with them. Because of EOPS, I'm actually graduating with honors and transferring to Cal State Long Beach. Not only that, but because of EOPS, I stand here today to say, sorry. But yeah, I asked today that you not flex their programs and to fully restore the funds to EOPS. But that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Teresa Tenna. I'm with the Community College League of California. We represent the CEOs and the trustees of our 72 community college districts throughout the state. Appreciate your time and thoughtfulness in going through the agenda today. I want to talk about a couple of things that were discussed today and also the potential for maybe some new resources in May and how we'd like to suggest prioritizing those. In terms of the enrollment access discussion, we certainly appreciate the additional resources, the 3%. I think we have concerns that that number is too high, and recognize the dialogue about, what is that particular number. I mean, I think one of the concerns that we have is just recognizing that when we declined and we went through the Great Recession, we took cuts and we lost purchasing power. And we want to grow, but we want to grow commensurate with quality in terms of the services our students need to be successful. And so, we're concerned that that number might be too high. But as well, we're also concerned that 2015-16 is the more appropriate year in which to start a new funding formula, a growth formula per se. I think there's a recognition that our districts need that almost a year in advance for their planning purposes, and the budget won't be done until the end of June, and they won't have that number. That process is still not completed. So that's one issue. The other is very supportive of the $100 million augmentation for the Triple SP program, the existing program to augment it to about $200 million. Also, again, reiterating the comments expressed by Dr. Helen Benjamin, we're very supportive of the $100 million for student equity. We believe that our districts are prepared to complete the reports that are necessary to identify, where they could make substantial progress in closing achievement gaps for our students using evidence-based programs. As well, want to express some concerns about the match. Appreciate the ideas expressed by Dan Troy. We certainly would welcome having no match for some of those. And I do want to indicate that we believe that very strongly that we have substantial need for instructional equipment, and certainly loud and clear heard the legislative analysts' concerns, and hopefully, we'll be able to help with the Chancellor's office in getting the additional information needed. In terms of new resources, if they materialize in May, I think what we'd like to see is an increase in the college, the college prep, or the career development college prep non-credit rate to the credit rate. This is something that you'll discuss more in the non-credit hearing that you're going to have on Tuesday, but that's something that we feel very strongly about. It's something that did not get addressed when we moved to a new funding formula back in 2006. There's a component that was meant to be addressed, but certainly their funding certainly wasn't there during the Great Recession. As well, we'd like to see some resources for full-time faculty. We'd like to see about 400 part-time faculty numbers converted into full-time faculty. As well, we'd like to see resources for professional development, resources for CTE, resources as well for EOPS and DSPS.
You're losing me. You should submit a list in writing.
We will. Actually, I've got a list.
All right.
So appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's the $1 billion May revise increase for community colleges that we all back. I'm Patrick McCallum. I represent Los Angeles Community College District, Mount San Jacinto, San Francisco, San Diego, Los Rios, and a number of other districts. We are backing the governor's proposed budget. He's put $200 million in improving student success. In addition to this $100 million into the student success initiative, we think it's absolutely in the right place to go, along with the student success side of it as well. He's putting $150 million less to start restoring back the 500,000 students that we lost. And for LA, we did a survey of my clients that are about 33% of the districts, and they're growing. Mount San Jacinto can grow 5–10% if the money comes in. LA Valley colleges, where Mr. DeBobna, could grow upwards to 10% if the money was earlier. In the Valley, maybe 3 or 4%. San Diego, 3 or 4%. So restoring that access for those DSPS, EOPS students that we heard about not getting courses is really critical. We've heard some arguments that if you restore access, colleges are going to add PE. So we went back and we asked 6 of my districts, about 25% of students, this year with access dollars, where did you add? Not one district added additional course sections into PE. So they're adding it into CTE, they're adding it into transfer journals education, and they're adding it into basic skills. Exactly what we did. We created prioritization through legislation so districts' PE is lesser on within it. We've heard a concern about full-time faculty. We absolutely agree more full-time faculty. If you're going to increase full-time faculty, the only mechanism in place is what's called this FON number, and it's based on the increase of growth. So you increase growth by 3%, you increase full-time faculty by 3%. And then we've heard if you go to 2%, there'll be money left over for those districts like Mount Center and LA that are, no, districts are going to add summer school sections and they're going to get to their 2% cap and it's not left over. So we're with the governor on the access issue. Very quickly, $100 million focusing. We've heard some concerns within it. We back that. So let's go to May revise. We agree with your strategy here now. We would have liked an earlier action on growth to wait to May revise. You're going to see, we all know, a major increase. And we agree with the league. We need to add more money for EOPS and DSPS, as you're hearing. It's very high-quality programs, and we agree with that. One of the best things you could do is increase this non-credit rate, because that's where you get the most flexibility of dealing with basic skills, accelerating, contextualizing, and that's where much of the certificate CTE is going in. And those programs cost a lot more than $2,000 per FTS, the lowest funded program.
Callum, you're at 3 minutes.
Okay. And then finally on deferral, with more money in deferral, the discussion's going on. I'm going to bring it public. The biggest debt, if we're going to buy down the wall of debt, is the STRS debt. And we think an agreement between the state, K-14, and with some small deferral amount towards STRS should be considered with new one-time money. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Pat McPartland of the Association of California State Employees with Disabilities. ACSED is our acronym. ACSED's mission is the hiring, retention, and upward mobility of persons with disabilities in state civil service. We support restoration of $50 million in funding to the Disabled Student Services Program that was cut during the Great Recession. It's very important that students with disabilities be well prepared so that they will be good candidates for hiring into state civil service and other employment. This has been mentioned before by others, but I just want to again say 40%, very drastic cuts in the 2009-2010 year. The reason for that being the Great Recession, a necessary thing at the time, but now's the time to, now that the means are available, to replace that money. Many colleges have, the Disabled Students Program has been seriously hurt, and they cannot currently provide the needed services to students with disabilities, which are their civil right and essential to their success. We feel the legislature should give priority to restoring existing programs like Disabled Student Services, which have proven effective and which provide direct services to students, before funding programs such as student equity that have little track record, no infrastructure or accountability. We would ask that the committee redirect $50 million of the $100 million proposed by the governor from student equity to Disabled Students Services so that students with disabilities can get the services they need to succeed in college. We also support additional funding for EOPS, CalWORKS, and other programs serving educationally and economically disadvantaged students. Thank you very much for this opportunity to present our views.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Muriel Parento, and I am the Department Chair of Disabled Students Programs and Services at City College of San Francisco, and I see that Mr. Ting has left, so I am going to say with great assurance that City College is still strong, still here, still committed, and still City College, and I trust and know in my heart that the appeal process will prevail and City College will continue. DSPS currently serves over 2,000 students with disabilities, which also includes disabled veterans. Funding for DSPS and EOPS programs in the community colleges was cut dramatically in 2009-2010, and the need for financial restoration is urgent. DSPS in San Francisco has had to eliminate Saturday and evening counseling and testing accommodations. The accessible computer labs are no longer open for the students attending evening classes, and the software and hardware have not been upgraded for many years. In addition, I've been unable to hire and replace 3 full-time DSPS counselors for these 2,000 students. The proposed state budget earmarks $100 million for student success and $100 million for student equity. Assisting students with disabilities in participating in an accessible, affordable, quality education leads to jobs, transfer to four-year colleges, and student success. Student equity is about fairness, justice, and equal opportunity for members of disadvantaged groups. DSPS has been at the forefront of that struggle for decades and will continue to do so, but we need your help. Unfortunately, there's no assurance that any of that money will go to DSPS. I fear that many colleges will not do the right thing and will not restore funding to the DSPS legally mandated services. There needs to be financial accountability. I agree with KPED and request that $50 million of the new funding be specifically designated to DSPS, and I also ask that you consider our brothers and sisters in EOPS and CalWORKS. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sarah Funes. I am currently working on my second associate's degree in communication studies at Skyline College. I graduated this past fall with a degree in social science from College of San Mateo, magna cum laude. I am currently waiting to hear from Berkeley and a few of the other schools I applied, and have so far gotten into San Jose State, Cal State Northridge, and UC San Diego. I'm here today because although I have accomplished much at the community college, it is not without its hardships. Among these were long waits to get books in alternative formats because I'm both dyslexic and visually impaired, Both DSPSs at the two campuses I attended, College of San Mateo and Skyline College, still close early on Friday, which meant that when my classes were taking tests, I would have to reschedule for another day and time, and I had a full schedule, which is against federal regulations. Also, when I took statistics last summer, there was no DSPS tutoring, and the program I used to do my homework was not screen reader accessible. How did I get through, you might ask? My family and I hired a personal tutor to work with me for 60 hours. And my professor worked with me for 15 hours. And my math-inclined, just very smart friends worked with me for another 10. That's 85 hours for a 6-week summer course. Not only did I not understand the problems, I couldn't even read them. It's a civil rights issue. We need this program restored. There is money now, and I've even filed an OCR complaint against one of the colleges I attended. I started and went through the worst years of this recession, and it's been a struggle. I would have gone between schools I had to go between schools for certain classes because some of the accommodations were better at each campus. For example, when it came to books, one of the campuses was faster at getting them to me. I agree with KPED. If it'd be possible to designate the $50 million we need, I am an investment in California's future, as are all the disabled students in the community college system.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jonathan Lightman on behalf of the Faculty Association of California Community Colleges. I first want to thank the administration for their support for community colleges and for their willingness to engage in this conversation. I would also like to echo the sentiment of the LAO when he said that student success is more than simply orientation and placement. We believe that student success involves the following. First, there must be access to full-time faculty. Right now, 56% of credit instruction is taught by full-time faculty. That is way too low. The statewide goal is 75%. Incidentally, we have delivered a letter to you with all of this laid out. Second, there needs to be support for part-time faculty. Part-time faculty constitute the bulk of the instructors, and they're teaching way too high of a percentage of the instruction, not to mention the non-credit instruction where we don't have a faculty obligation number. Student success must entail office hours. Access for students to their office hours is vital. But pay equity is also important because we need to integrate the role of the part-time faculty onto the campus, and this was a goal of a prior administration, as well as health benefits, and that's self-explanatory. Student success also involves access to student services, and this is not simply a label. You've heard the point made over and over. EOPS, DSPS, and CalWORKS are accountable. You can look at their accountability studies. To suggest that we should be giving money to student equity is important, but we start with the programs. It's all going to be about programs. But the point is that there are statewide reasons why we have statewide programs so that we're not pitting groups of vulnerable students against one another at the local level and subjecting it to politics. That conversation needs to occur here because it is fundamentally a civil rights issue. And everything that you heard before about the 2009 budget is 100% correct. At that time, it was a matter of necessity with the idea that when the money came back, this would be the first call. We wouldn't start going in another direction. We would restore those budgets completely. Finally, access to general counseling. We can't just simply give this money out into student success and say we're successful. Not when there is a perceived or the last studied ratio of 1 to 2,000 of students to counselors. We need a genuine goal. FAC has factored in both categorical counseling and general counseling in this. We believe it should be about 1 to 600. Without the categorical, maybe about 1 to 350. But that needs to be part of that $100 million in the student success. The issue of COLA, you've heard before, but we lost 16.3% at purchasing power, and we don't have a deficit factor. So frankly, that needs to be part of the equation. And finally, you also heard about professional development. We look forward to continuing the conversation with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lest I sound too presumptuous, I stand before you as 40,000 part-time faculty members in the system. My name is Deborah Shanks, and I've been a part-time faculty member at Diablo Valley College for over 30 years. And although the budget is generous in its proposals, it is very much inadequate when it addresses the role and need of the part-time faculty. Obviously, we teach almost 50% of all courses. And the whole concept of access and success and equity goes beyond access. Here's some courses. Access is also access to your faculty member in office time, outside of class. The majority of the part-time faculty courses include DSPS students, EOPS students, basic skills students, English second language students, students who are first time in college, those who are terribly underprepared coming into the system. And when part-time faculty are not available to do office time, paid to do office time, or even required to do office time, they are not there to help those students succeed. And so success requires a much bigger picture, and that's why the part-time faculty categorical funds were set in place, is to make sure that there was money supplied to encourage these districts to make sure that their part-time faculty were doing office time to help those students succeed outside of class, and to have a certain sense of equity for the students who come in and pay equal fees, regardless of whether they're going to be in a full-timers class or a part-timers class. They pay the same fees. They do not get the same access. And so it's imperative that as you look at this budget, and especially those categoricals, that you relook at those part-time faculty categoricals. They are absolutely necessary so that we have success, equity, and access for all students, no matter where they come from or how much they are prepared, because they are the ultimate goal of our educational system. So I urge you to really look at the part-time faculty and realize that we are an integral, necessary part of the complete college system and the students' experience. So in my district, by the way, the current state ratio is 56% of courses are taught by full-time faculty. In my district, it's 50.5% of all courses are taught by full-time faculty. So this is really an extremely important issue. Thank you very much.